The dust storm on Kepler 442b had been raging for 3 days when HFY finally saw the strange shapes rising from the sand. She stopped her hover bike and pulled down her goggles, squinting through the red haze that covered everything on this dead world. The shapes looked like buildings, but they were different from anything she had seen before. "Taemin, are you getting this?" She spoke into her comm device. Her research partner was back at their camp working on translating some symbols they had found yesterday. "What is it now?" Taemin's voice crackled through the static. "Another pile of rocks that looks like a face?" HFY smiled despite herself. Taemin always made jokes when he was nervous, and they had been on this planet for 2 months without finding anything important. The Galactic Council had sent them here because some satellite scans showed unusual energy readings, but so far they had only found empty desert and broken stones. "No, this is different," she said, climbing off her bike. "These structures are huge and they're made of some kind of metal that doesn't match our database." She walked closer to the nearest structure. It was tall, maybe 50 meters high, and covered in strange markings. The metal was black but seemed to shimmer with different colors when the light hit it right. Most strange of all, the sand around the buildings was completely clean, as if something was keeping it swept away. HFY took out her scanner and pointed it at the wall. The device beeped and showed readings that made no sense. According to the scanner, the metal was older than any known civilization in the galaxy. The energy signature was unlike anything in their records. "Taemin, you need to see this," she said. "I'm sending you the scan data now." There was a long pause. Then Taemin's voice came back, much more serious now. "HFY, that can't be right. Your scanner must be broken. Nothing is that old." "The scanner is working fine," she replied, running, her hand along the strange symbols carved into the wall. They were deep and precise, made with tools that must have been incredibly advanced. "I'm going to look for a way inside." She walked around the building, her boots crunching on the hard-packed sand. On the far side, she found what looked like a doorway, but it was sealed shut. The symbols here were different, arranged in patterns that almost looked like writing. "I found an entrance," she reported. "It's covered in more symbols. Can you bring the portable lab here? I want to take detailed scans of everything." "On my way," Taemin said. "But HFY, be careful. We don't know what we're dealing with here." HFY spent the next hour documenting everything she could see. The buildings were not just old, they were perfect. No wear from weather, no damage from time, no signs that they had ever been used. It was as if someone had built them and then disappeared the next day. When Taemin arrived with their equipment, his eyes went wide. "By the 7 suns," he whispered. "These aren't ruins. They look like they were built yesterday." "But the scans say they're millions of years old," HFY said. "How is that possible?" Taemin set up his translation computer and began scanning the symbols. The machine hummed and clicked as it compared the markings to every known language in the galactic database. After an hour, it made a sound they had never heard before, a long, low beep that meant it had found something completely unknown. "The computer can't match these symbols to any known writing system," Taemin said, staring at the screen. "But it has found patterns. This is definitely a language, and it's incredibly complex. Look at this." He pointed to a series of symbols that appeared over and over again. "These characters keep repeating. If I'm reading the patterns right, this might be a name or title. The computer thinks it says something like human, but that doesn't make sense." "Human?" HFY frowned. "I've never heard of any species called humans. Are you sure?" "The translation is rough, but yes, and look at this." Taemin pointed to another section of the wall. "These symbols appear to be numbers, dates maybe. If the computer is right, these buildings were made over 3 million years ago." HFY felt a chill run down her spine. 3 million years ago, the galaxy was very different. Most of the current major civilizations were still primitive, barely able to use fire. The only advanced species back then were the ancients, and they had disappeared long before anyone could study them. "We need to get inside," she said. "There might be more information in there." They spent the rest of the day trying to open the sealed doorway. Their tools could not cut through the metal, and their scanners could not penetrate it. Whatever this material was, it was far beyond anything they understood. As the sun set, painting the sky a deep purple, HFY noticed something strange. The symbols on the door were glowing. Just a faint light, but definitely there. "Taemin, look at this," she said. He looked up from his equipment and gasped. The symbols were not just glowing now, they were moving, rearranging themselves into new patterns, as if the door was trying to communicate. "The door is responding to something," Taemin said, checking his scanners. "Maybe our presence, or our equipment, or—" Suddenly, the door made a soft sound, like air being released. A section of the wall slid aside, revealing a dark passage that led into the building. "Should we call Captain Boram?" HFY asked. Their expedition leader was orbiting the planet in her ship, waiting for them to report their findings. "Not yet," Taemin said, already gathering his equipment. "Let's see what's in there first. We might just find empty rooms." They activated their light sources and stepped through the doorway. The passage was long and straight, with more symbols covering the walls. Their footsteps echoed in the silence, and the air was clean and fresh, as if the building had its own atmosphere system. The passage opened into a vast chamber that took their breath away. The ceiling was so high they could not see it in the darkness, and the walls were covered with what looked like screens or displays. In the center of the room stood a pedestal with something glowing on top of it. "Incredible," HFY whispered. "This technology is beyond anything we have." They approached the pedestal carefully. On top was a crystal device that pulsed with soft blue light. Around it were more symbols, but these were different from the others. They seemed newer, more urgent. Taemin scanned the crystal with his equipment. "It's some kind of data storage device," he said. "The energy readings are off the charts. There's enough information in there to fill our entire ship's computer." "Can you access it?" HFY asked. "I can try." Taemin connected his portable computer to the crystal device. Immediately, the screens on the walls came to life, showing images and text in the strange symbol language. One image made them both step back in shock. It showed a galaxy map, but not the galaxy as they knew it. This map showed thousands more stars, millions more worlds, and civilizations that no longer existed. "This can't be right," Taemin said. "This map shows species that died out millions of years ago. And look at this." He pointed to one section of the map. It was marked with the symbol they thought meant human. The territory shown was enormous, covering a quarter of the galaxy. "If this map is accurate," HFY said slowly, "then these humans were one of the most powerful civilizations that ever existed. But why is there no record of them in our databases?" More images flashed on the screens. They showed cities that floated among the stars, ships that could cross the galaxy in days, and technology that seemed more like magic than science. And in every image there were beings that looked similar to some of the species they knew today, but somehow different. "These beings," Taemin said, studying the images carefully. "They look familiar, but I can't place them." The images changed again, showing what looked like a great war. Ships battling among the stars, worlds burning, civilizations falling, and through it all, the beings called humans seemed to be fighting against the destruction, trying to protect others. Then the images stopped, replaced by a single message in the symbol language. Taemin's computer worked to translate it, and slowly words appeared on his screen. "We sleep, but we do not forget," Taemin read aloud. "When the galaxy bleeds, we shall return." "What does that mean?" HFY asked. Before Taemin could answer, alarms started blaring from their equipment. Something was approaching from outside. "Captain Boram to ground team," came a voice through their comm system. "We're picking up energy signatures from your location. What's your status?" "We found something incredible," HFY replied. "Ancient ruins with technology beyond anything we've seen. We need to document everything." "Negative." Boram's voice was sharp. "I'm getting readings of multiple ships approaching this system. Unknown origin. You need to get back to your transport now." Through the chamber's entrance, they could see lights in the sky. Ships were landing outside the ruins, and they were not from any species HFY recognized. "We have to go," Taemin said, quickly disconnecting his equipment from the crystal device. But we can't leave this behind. This discovery could change everything. As they ran toward the exit, HFY grabbed the crystal device from the pedestal. The moment she touched it, the entire building began to hum with power. The screens flickered and the symbols on the walls began to glow brighter. "What did you do?" Taemin shouted over the growing noise. "I don't know," HFY replied, clutching the crystal tightly. They burst out of the building and ran toward their hover bikes, the strange ships. Woojin sat in the highest chamber of the Galactic Council building, looking out at the city that stretched beyond the horizon. Millions of beings from hundreds of different species lived and worked together here, creating the most diverse civilization the galaxy had ever known. At least that was what everyone believed. The door chimed and his assistant entered carrying a datapad. "Sir, the report from the Kepler expedition has arrived. It's marked Level Omega." Woojin's blood went cold. Level Omega meant information so dangerous it could threaten the stability of the entire galaxy. In his 50 years as Supreme Chancellor, he had only seen 3 Level Omega reports. "Show me," he said quietly. The assistant handed him the pad and left quickly. Woojin read the report twice, his hands shaking by the time he finished. They had found them. After 3 million years, someone had finally found proof that the humans had existed. He walked to his private safe and entered a code that only he knew. Inside was a single ancient data crystal, passed down from chancellor to chancellor for millions of years. It contained the true history of the galaxy, the history that had been erased to keep the peace. Woojin inserted the crystal into his private computer and watched the familiar images appear. The galaxy as it had been 3 million years ago, when the humans ruled not through conquest but through protection. They had been the peacekeepers, the problem solvers, the ones who stopped wars before they could start. But they had also been dangerous, not because they wanted to hurt anyone, but because they could do anything. They learned faster than any species should be able to learn. They adapted to any environment. They solved problems that had puzzled other civilizations for thousands of years. And they never stopped growing stronger. The other major powers of that time had grown afraid, not of human aggression, but of human potential. What would happen when the humans decided they no longer needed anyone else? What would happen when they became so advanced that other species were nothing more than pets to them? So they had made a terrible decision. They had convinced the galaxy that the humans were a threat that needed to be stopped. They had fabricated evidence of human crimes, created false stories of human aggression, and turned the entire galaxy against them. The humans, faced with a choice between war and exile, had chosen exile. They had gathered their people and their technology and disappeared into the dark spaces between stars. And then, to make sure the lie became truth, the coalition had erased every trace of human existence from the galactic records. Woojin closed his eyes. His own species, the Karathi, had been part of that coalition. They had helped destroy the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known out of fear and jealousy. Now someone had found evidence of the truth. And if the humans were still out there, still watching, they would know that their secret had been discovered. Far away, in a hidden system at the edge of the Andromeda spiral, warning alarms were sounding in underground cities that had been silent for millions of years. Hyunsu opened his eyes for the first time in 3,000 years. The cryogenic chamber around him hissed as it released the chemicals that had kept him in perfect suspension. His body felt strange as it came back to life, but his mind was clear. "Status report," he said, his voice rough from disuse. "Sir, the monitoring stations have detected activity on Kepler 44E2b, came the voice of Yoonji, his second in command. She had awakened a few days ago when the first alarm sounded. "Someone has accessed one of our archive sites." Hyunsu sat up slowly, letting his body adjust to being awake. Around him, the vast underground facility stretched away into the distance. Millions of his people slept in chambers like his, waiting for the day when they might be needed again. "How many know?" he asked. "Unknown, but the information has reached the Galactic Council. Supreme Chancellor Woojin has accessed the restricted archives. He knows what his people did to us." Hyunsu nodded. He had expected this day to come eventually. The truth had a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply it was buried. "What's the current state of the galaxy?" he asked. Yunji handed him a data tablet. 7 major powers now control most of known space. The Velkari Empire has been expanding aggressively for the past 1,000 years. They're using technology that's clearly based on our designs, though they don't seem to understand how it works. Hyun-Soo studied the information. The galaxy had changed dramatically since they had gone into exile. New species had risen to power, old ones had fallen, and the careful balance they had once maintained was gone. "The Velkari Emperor," he said, reading the file. "Kyung-ho, that's a human name." "Yes, sir. We believe he's a hybrid. Human and Velkari genetics. Someone has been breeding with our kind." Hyun-Soo felt a mix of anger and sadness. Even in exile, some humans had stayed behind, hidden among the other species. Their descendants were now using stolen human technology to conquer the galaxy. "Wake the council," he ordered. "It's time to decide what we do next." As alarms continued to sound throughout the hidden cities, millions of humans began the slow process of waking up. Some had been asleep for a few hundred years, others for millions. But all of them remembered why they had chosen exile over war. In the council chamber, 12 of the most senior human leaders gathered around a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. They were all old, even by human standards, and they had all lived through the betrayal that had sent their people into hiding. "The situation is clear," said Dalho, the military commander. "The galaxy is less stable now than when we left it. Without us to maintain the balance, the major powers have been fighting constant wars. Billions have died in conflicts we could have prevented." "That's not our responsibility anymore," replied Su Young, the civilian leader. "We chose to leave. We chose to let them solve their own problems." "Did we?" asked Hyun-Soo. "Or did we just run away because we were afraid of what they thought of us?" The debate continued for hours. Some wanted to remain hidden, to let the galaxy solve its own problems. Others felt they had a duty to help, especially with the Velkari Empire threatening to conquer everything. Finally, Minsu, the ancient AI that had guided them for millions of years, spoke. "There is something you need to know," the artificial being said. "I have been monitoring galactic communications for the entire time you have been asleep. The Velkari Empire is not just conquering territory. They are actively hunting for us." The room fell silent. "Emperor Kyung-ho knows what he is," Minsu continued. "He knows he has human heritage, and he's been searching for our hiding places. He wants to unite the human survivors under his rule and use our technology to conquer the entire galaxy." "How close is he to finding us?" asked Yunji. "Very close. The archaeological team that found our archive site was followed by Velkari agents. They now know we're still out there somewhere." Hyun-Soo stood up. "Then we have no choice. If we remain hidden, Kyung-ho will eventually find us and try to use us for his war. If we reveal ourselves, we can control how the galaxy learns the truth." "You're talking about ending our exile," said Su Young. "After 3 million years, you want to go back to a galaxy that hates us." "The galaxy that hated us is gone," Hyun-Soo replied. "This is a new galaxy, with new people. They deserve to know the truth about their history, and they deserve our help against the threats they're facing." The vote was close, but in the end the council agreed. It was time for humanity to return. Across the hidden worlds, the awakening began in earnest. Entire cities came back to life, as millions of humans emerged from their long sleep. Ships that had been mothballed for eons were powered up and prepared for service. Technology that had been advancing automatically for millions of years was readied for use. But not everyone was happy about the return. On the bridge of his flagship, Emperor Kyung-ho received the report he had been waiting for. "Sir, our agents confirm that the archive site was of human origin," said his intelligence officer. "The technology matches what we found in the other ruins." Kyung-ho smiled. He was tall and imposing, with the dark hair and eyes of his human ancestors mixed with the blue-tinted skin of the Velkari. He had spent his entire life searching for his human heritage, and now he was close to finding it. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered. "If the humans are awakening, we need to find them before anyone else does." They are my people, and I will unite them under my rule. Sir, what about the Galactic Council's research team? Eliminate them, Kyung-ho said without hesitation. We can't let them spread news of this discovery. The galaxy isn't ready to learn the truth about the humans. As the Valkyrie fleet prepared for war, Haiwan and her team were racing back to Council space with their incredible discovery. They had no idea that their findings had already set in motion events that would shake the galaxy to its core. The ancient crystal device she carried contained more than just historical records. It was also a beacon, broadcasting their location to anyone who knew how to listen. And in the hidden worlds of humanity, millions of awakening minds were hearing its call. The exile was ending. After 3 million years of silence, humanity was about to return to a galaxy that had forgotten them. The question was whether the galaxy was ready for what the humans had become during their long sleep in the darkness. In her private quarters aboard the transport ship, Haiwan studied the crystal device. 3 weeks after returning from Kepler 442b, Haiwan found herself standing in the most secure research facility in Council space. The crystal device sat on a table in front of her, still pulsing with its mysterious blue light. Around the room, the galaxy's best scientists and historians worked to unlock its secrets. The linguistic patterns are becoming clearer, Taemin said, looking up from his computer. I think I've figured out the basic grammar structure. This language is incredibly advanced, but it follows logical rules. Dr. Yunho, the Council's chief historian, shook his head in amazement. The data in this device goes back over 4 million years. It contains records of civilizations that we thought were myths. The builders, the star shepherds, the ancient ones, they were all real. But what about these humans? Asked Colonel Jae-sung, the military liaison assigned to the project. What do we know about them? Haiwan activated the holographic display. Images filled the air around them, showing the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago. According to the records, the humans were remarkable. They appeared relatively late in galactic history, but they advanced faster than any species before or since. The images showed human cities that spanned entire star systems, ships that could travel between galaxies, and technology that seemed to break the laws of physics, but more importantly, they showed humans working alongside hundreds of other species, sharing their knowledge and protecting the weak. They weren't conquerors, Taemin said. They were protectors. Every record shows them stopping wars, preventing disasters, and helping other species advance. Then why aren't they in our history books? Colonel Jae-sung asked. Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Security. Screens showed Valkyrie warships dropping out of hyperspace around the research station. This is Emperor Kyung-ho of the Valkyrie Empire, came a voice over the communication system. You are in possession of stolen property. Surrender the human artifacts immediately. Dr. Yunho looked confused. How do they even know we're here? This location is classified. Haiwan felt a chill of realization. They've been tracking the crystal. It must be broadcasting some kind of signal. The facility's commander, General Insu, rushed into the research lab. We're surrounded by 12 Valkyrie battleships. They're demanding we hand over your discovery. We can't let them have it, Haiwan said. This information is too important. Suddenly, the crystal device began to glow brighter. New images appeared in the holographic display, showing recent events. The Valkyrie fleet approaching the station. Emperor Kyung-ho on his command bridge. And then, something that made everyone in the room gasp. The image showed Kyung-ho's true appearance. His features were clearly a mix of Valkyrie and something else. Something that looked remarkably like the human images they had been studying. By the 7 moons, whispered Dr. Yunho. He's part human. The crystal pulsed again, and a new voice filled the room. It was speaking in perfect galactic standard, with no accent or translation errors. Greetings. I am Minsu, an artificial intelligence created by the human civilization. I have been waiting a long time to deliver this message. Everyone in the room stared at the crystal in shock. The voice continued. The being you know as Emperor Kyung-ho is indeed part human. He is descended from humans who remained behind when our people went into exile. But he does not represent us or our values. He has been corrupted by power and has forgotten what it means to be human. Exile? Tai Min asked. What exile? The crystal projected new images. They showed a great meeting of galactic powers 3 million years ago. Representatives of dozens of species gathered to discuss what they called the human problem. Your ancestors were afraid of us, Minsu explained. Not because we threatened them, but because we advanced so quickly. They feared that one day we would become so powerful that we would no longer need them. So they created lies about us, convincing the galaxy that we were dangerous conquerors who needed to be stopped. The images showed fabricated evidence of human aggression, false reports of human expansion, and propaganda campaigns designed to turn the galaxy against them. Faced with a choice between war and exile, our people chose exile. We gathered our civilization and left known space, hoping that time would heal the wounds and allow us to return someday. But you've been watching us, Heywan said. Haven't you? Yes. We left behind monitoring stations and artificial intelligences to observe galactic development. We hoped that eventually the galaxy would be ready for the truth. Outside the research station, the Velkari ships were getting closer. Emperor Kyung-ho's voice came over the communication system again. You have 1 minute to surrender the human artifacts. After that, we will take them by force. General Insu looked at the research team. We can't fight 12 battleships. Our weapons are no match for theirs. Minsu's voice spoke again. That will not be necessary. Help is already on the way. On the tactical display, new contacts appeared. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace all around the Velkari fleet. But these ships looked different from anything anyone had ever seen. They were sleek and graceful, with no visible weapons or engines, but they moved with impossible speed and precision. This is Commander Ji-wan of the Human First Contact Fleet, came a new voice over the communication system. Emperor Kyung-ho, you will withdraw your forces immediately. On the main screen they could see Kyung-ho on his command bridge, his face twisted with rage. Humans. Finally you reveal yourselves. You belong with me, not with these inferior species. Join me and together we can rule the galaxy. We do not rule, Ji-wan replied calmly. We protect, we serve, we help others grow. These are the values you have forgotten, the Velkari Emperor snarled. If you will not join me willingly, then I will take what I need by force. All ships open fire. The Velkari fleet opened fire on both the human ships and the research station. But something incredible happened. The human ships didn't dodge the attacks, they absorbed them. The energy from the Velkari weapons was somehow captured and redirected harmlessly into space. Your weapons cannot harm us, Ji-wan said. We have spent 3 million years advancing our technology. We are no longer the same species that left this galaxy so long ago. To prove the point, one of the human ships moved closer to a Velkari battleship. Without firing any visible weapon, it somehow disabled the enemy vessel completely. The battleship went dark, floating helplessly in space. Surrender now, Ji-wan said. Your crews will not be harmed, but your aggression ends here. But Kyung-ho was not ready to give up. If I cannot have the human technology, then no one can. He activated his ship's self-destruct sequence, planning to take everyone with him. The human ships moved faster than thought. In seconds, they had surrounded the Velkari flagship and somehow transported everyone off it before it exploded. Even Kyung-ho materialized on the research station, held in some kind of energy field. How? He asked, staring at the human ships. In amazement, Commander Ji-wan materialized in the research lab using technology that made teleportation look simple. She was tall and graceful, with the dark features they had seen in the historical records. But there was something different about her, something that suggested she was more than just human. We evolved, she said simply. 3 million years of isolation gave us time to grow beyond what we once were. We developed abilities that your ancestors feared we might someday possess. She looked around the room at the assembled scientists and officials. Dr. Heywan, your discovery has begun a process that cannot be stopped. The galaxy is about to learn the truth about its history. Dr. Yunho stepped forward. Are you saying that everything we know about galactic history is wrong? Not wrong, G1 replied. Incomplete. The coalition that exiled us made sure that all records of our existence were destroyed, but they could not destroy the truth forever. She activated a device on her wrist, and suddenly the entire research station was filled with holographic images. They showed the real history of the galaxy, the wars that humans had prevented, the disasters they had stopped, the civilizations they had helped develop. Your species, Dr. Yunho, she said, looking at the historian. The Karathi. We saved your homeworld from a plague that would have killed billions. We gave your people the technology to travel between stars. She turned to Colonel Jae Sung. The Kelpari military traditions you follow were developed by human advisors who helped your species defend themselves against the Ravager invasions. One by one, she showed how humans had helped every major civilization in the galaxy. Not by conquering them or ruling them, but by guiding them and protecting them. But why did our ancestors lie about you? Asked General Insu. Fear, Ji-won said sadly. Fear of being left behind. Fear of becoming irrelevant. They convinced themselves that we would eventually outgrow our need for them and cast them aside. So they decided to cast us aside first. Emperor Kyung-ho, still held in the energy field, laughed bitterly. And they were right to fear you. Look at what you've become. You're not human anymore. You're something else entirely. We're still human, Ji-won replied. But we're human as we were meant to be. We've learned to use more of our potential, to be more than we were. This is what your ancestors feared, not that we would destroy them, but that we would show them what they could become. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from over 200 species filled the Great Assembly Hall, all talking at once about the revelation that had shaken their understanding of the galaxy. Supreme Chancellor Wu Jin stood at the central podium, trying to maintain order. Please, honored delegates, we must discuss this calmly. Calmly, shouted Ambassador Veltara of the Zephyrian Union. You're telling us that our entire history is a lie, that our ancestors conspired to exile the most advanced species in the HFY galaxy. That's exactly what we're telling you, said Haiwan, who had been invited to present her findings to the council. She activated the holographic display, showing the evidence they had gathered from the crystal device. These records are indisputable. The humans were not conquerors or threats. They were protectors who helped every major civilization develop and grow. The stories about human aggression were fabricated by a coalition of species who feared being left behind. Ambassador Keth Nar of the Drakmari Empire slammed his fist on his desk. Lies. The humans were dangerous. My people's archives clearly state. Your people's archives were altered, interrupted Commander Ji-won, who had materialized in the center of the assembly hall. Her sudden appearance caused a wave of fear and excitement throughout the chamber. I am Commander Ji-won of the Human Expeditionary Force. I have come to address this assembly and to offer our assistance in correcting the historical record. Several security guards moved forward, but Wu Jin waved them back. Let her speak. Ji-won looked around the vast chamber, her enhanced senses taking in every detail. 3 million years ago, your ancestors made a choice based on fear. They convinced themselves that we would eventually become their masters, so they decided to make us their enemies instead. She gestured, and the holographic display changed to show images of the Great Deception, documents being altered, evidence being destroyed, witnesses being silenced. The coalition was led by 7 major powers of that time: the Karathi, the Drakmari, the Zephyrians, the Velkari, the Nathani, the Gorvak, and the Trilaxians. Together, they created false evidence of human crimes and convinced the galaxy that we needed to be stopped. But surely some records survived, said Ambassador Lethkor of the Nathani Republic. Someone must have questioned the official story. They did, Ji-won replied, and they were eliminated. Anyone who tried to preserve the true history or defend the humans was branded as a traitor and executed. The coalition was thorough in their deception. The assembly hall erupted in angry voices. Representatives accused each other of ancestral crimes while others demanded proof of Ji-won's claims. Silence! Wu Jin shouted, activating the chamber's sound dampeners. Commander Jiwan, you claim to have proof. Show us. Jiwan nodded to someone outside the hall. A moment later, the air shimmered and a dozen more figures appeared. They were clearly human, but like Jiwan, there was something different about them. They moved with perfect grace, and their eyes held depths that spoke of vast knowledge and experience. This is Dongwu, our chief historian, Jiwan said, indicating a tall man with kind eyes. He has spent the last 3 million years documenting what really happened. Dongwu stepped forward and activated a device on his wrist. Suddenly, the entire assembly hall was transformed. The walls became transparent, showing images of the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago. Observe, Dongwu said, his voice carrying clearly to every corner of the chamber. This is the Karathi homeworld, 3.2 million years ago. The image showed a world dying from a terrible plague. Billions of beings lay sick and dying while their primitive medical technology proved useless. And this is what really happened, Dongwu continued. The scene changed to show human ships arriving at the planet. Human medical teams worked tirelessly to cure the plague, sharing their advanced knowledge freely. Within months, the crisis was over and the Karathi civilization was saved. But according to your altered records, Dongwu said, looking directly at Wu Jin, the humans never helped your people. Instead, your archives claim that the Karathi developed the cure themselves. Wu Jin's face went pale. I don't understand. Our most ancient records clearly state that we solved the plague crisis alone. Because your ancestors rewrote those records after they exiled us, Dongwu replied. They couldn't let their people know that they had betrayed the species that saved them. He continued showing evidence of human aid to every major civilization. The Drakmari had been saved from invasion by a hostile neighbor. The Zephyrians had been given the technology to prevent their star from going nova. The Velkari had been helped to unify their fractured homeworld. In every case, Dongwu explained, the historical records were altered to remove any mention of human involvement. Your ancestors wanted to believe they had achieved these things alone. This is overwhelming, said Ambassador Velterra, her voice shaking. If this is true, then everything we thought we knew about our history is wrong. Not wrong, said Young He, another human who had stepped forward. She was smaller than the others, with gentle features and sad eyes. Incomplete. Your ancestors were not evil beings. They were frightened and proud. They made a choice they thought was right at the time. But the consequences of that choice have echoed through the millennia, added Hyunsu, the man who appeared to be their leader. Without humans to maintain the balance, the galaxy has suffered countless wars that could have been prevented. He gestured, and the display showed the last 3 million years of galactic history. Conflict after conflict, disaster after disaster, all happening because there was no longer a species dedicated to keeping the peace. The Ravager wars that killed billions could have been stopped before they started. The Great Plague that wiped out the Centauri Federation could have been cured. The collapse of the Outer Rim civilizations could have been prevented. But you left us, accused Ambassador Kethnar. You abandoned the galaxy to its fate. No, Hyunsu replied firmly. We were exiled. Given a choice between war and departure, we chose departure. We could have fought back, could have used our technology to force the galaxy to accept us. Instead, we chose to leave rather than cause more bloodshed. But you've been watching us, said Haewon. Haven't you? Yes, Hyunsu admitted. We left behind monitoring stations and artificial intelligences to observe galactic development. We hoped that someday the galaxy would be ready for the truth. Supreme Chancellor Wu Jin stepped forward. And now? Are you here to punish us for what our ancestors did? Punishment? Hyunsu looked genuinely surprised. No, we're here to help. The galaxy is facing new threats that require our assistance. Jiwan activated another display, this one showing current galactic conditions. The Velkari Empire's expansion has upset the balance of power. Without someone to mediate disputes, we're looking at the possibility of a galactic war that could destroy everything. Emperor Kyung-ho, said Colonel Jae-sung, who had been quietly observing the proceedings. He's part human. Is he working with you? Absolutely not, Hyunsu said firmly. Kyung-ho is descended from humans who chose to remain behind when we went into exile. But he has been corrupted by power. He represents everything we stand against. As if summoned by his name, alarms began blaring throughout the council chambers. The main display showed dozens of Velkari warships dropping out of hyperspace around the station. "This is Emperor Kyung-ho," came a familiar voice over the communication system. "I demand the immediate surrender of the human delegates. They belong, with their own kind, under proper leadership." "Our own kind?" Ji-won said, a note of disgust in her voice. "You've forgotten what it means to be human, Kyung-ho." The Emperor's image appeared on the main screen. His mixed heritage was even more obvious now, and his eyes burned with fanatic intensity. "I am the rightful heir to human power. I have united the Velkari Empire and expanded its territory beyond anything my ancestors dreamed of. Join me, and together we can rule the galaxy as humans were meant to." "Humans were never meant to rule," Yeon-su replied calmly. "We were meant to serve, to protect, to help others reach their potential." "Weakness," Kyung-ho snarled. "The other species fear us because they know we're superior. Why should we hide that truth?" "Because superiority without compassion is just tyranny," Young-hee said softly. "You've become everything our ancestors fought against." The Velkari fleet began moving closer to the council station. Several delegates started to panic, calling for evacuation. "Don't worry," Ji-won said calmly. "We won't let any harm come to you." She seemed to speak to the air, and suddenly the space around the council station was filled with human ships. They appeared from nowhere, their advanced cloaking technology making them invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. "Impossible," Kyung-ho breathed, staring at the display. "Where did they come from?" "We never left," Yeon-su explained. "We've been here all along, hidden in the spaces between stars, watching and waiting." The human fleet vastly outnumbered the Velkari ships, but more impressive than their numbers was their technology. The ships moved without visible engines, turned without inertia, and seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime. "Last chance, Kyung-ho," Ji-won said. "Surrender your fleet and we'll discuss terms for your rehabilitation." Never. 6 months after the Galactic Council voted to accept humanity's return, the galaxy was still trying to understand what that meant. On the former Velkari capital world of Nexus Prime, construction crews from dozens of species worked together to build something that had never existed before, a truly integrated galactic city. Hae-won stood on the observation deck of the new Galactic Cooperation Center, watching ships from hundreds of worlds arrive and depart. Next to her, Soo-jin, the former Velkari intelligence officer who had become one of the project's main coordinators, reviewed the daily progress reports. "The Drakmari delegation arrived this morning," Soo-jin said. "They're still suspicious, but they're participating in the cultural exchange program." "And the Karathi?" Hae-won asked. "Supreme Chancellor Woo-jin has been working closely with human advisors to restore the true historical records. It's difficult for his people to accept how much of their past was fabricated." Hae-won nodded. The process of revealing the truth had been harder than anyone expected. Some species had accepted the evidence quickly, grateful to finally understand their real history. Others had struggled with the revelation that their greatest achievements had been accomplished with human help that was then erased from memory. "How is he doing?" she asked, indicating the secure facility visible in the distance. Soo-jin followed her gaze to where Emperor Kyung-ho was being held. "Better. The human therapists say he's starting to understand the difference between leadership and domination. It will take time, but they believe he can be rehabilitated." The process of dealing with Kyung-ho had been one of the most challenging aspects of the transition. Many species had demanded his execution for the wars he had started and the lives he had cost, but the humans had insisted on a different approach. "We don't believe in throwing people away," Young-hee had explained to the council. "Kyung-ho was corrupted by power and isolation, but he's still part human. He still has the potential to become something better." A soft chime announced an incoming message. Hae-won activated the communication panel to find Commander Ji-won's face appearing in the hologram. Dr. Haywan, we're ready for the next phase of the integration program. Are your teams prepared? As ready as we can be, Haywan replied. The scientists are still struggling to understand some of the concepts, but they're eager to learn. Understanding will come with time, Jiwan said. What's important is that they're willing to try. We'll start with basic principles and build from there. Over the past months, the humans had begun sharing their knowledge with selected scientists and philosophers from across the galaxy. Not their technology. As they had explained, most species weren't ready for that level of advancement, but the underlying principles that had allowed them to evolve beyond their physical limitations. It's not about becoming superhuman, Dongwu had explained during one of the early sessions. It's about becoming fully human, about using all of your potential instead of just the small portion that most species typically access. The learning process was slow and difficult. Concepts that seemed simple to the humans required entirely new ways of thinking for other species. But progress was being made. In the research center below, Tai Min worked with a team of linguists to translate human philosophical texts. The language itself was challenging enough, but the ideas it contained were revolutionary. Listen to this, he said to his colleague, Dr. Nam Wu of the Trilaxian Institute. According to this text, consciousness isn't produced by the brain. It's more like the brain is a receiver that tunes into consciousness. That doesn't make sense, Nam Wu replied, his tentacles writhing in confusion. Consciousness clearly emerges from neural activity. That's what we always assumed, Taemin said. But what if we were wrong? What if consciousness is a fundamental force of the universe like gravity or electromagnetism? Their debate was interrupted by the arrival of Minsu, the ancient human AI who had become their primary teacher. The artificial intelligence appeared as a hologram, but one that seemed more real than most physical beings. You're both partially correct, Minsu said in its calm, patient voice. Consciousness does interact with neural activity, but it exists, independently of it. Think of it like a radio signal. The radio doesn't create the signal, but it's needed to receive and interpret it. But how do you prove something like that? Dr. Nam Wu asked. Experience, Minsu replied. Once you learn to expand your consciousness beyond the normal boundaries, you'll understand. It's not something that can be explained in words alone. Similar conversations were happening all over the galaxy. In the Karathi system, philosophers worked with human advisors to understand concepts of time and space that contradicted everything they thought they knew. On Zephyrian research stations, scientists struggled to grasp theories of energy manipulation that seemed more like magic than science. But perhaps the most important work was happening in the former war zones, where human peacekeepers worked to heal the damage caused by centuries of conflict. Insu, the former general who had first encountered the humans at the research station, now commanded a joint task force of human and non-human personnel. Their mission was to restore planets that had been devastated by war and help displaced populations rebuild their lives. The work goes beyond just physical reconstruction, Insu explained to a group of visiting delegates. The humans have taught us that healing requires addressing the spiritual and emotional damage, as well as the physical. On the planet below them, former enemies worked side by side to plant new forests where battlefields had once scarred the land. Human advisors moved among them, not directing the work but offering guidance when needed. They have a way of bringing out the best in people, observed Dalho, one of Insu's assistants. I've seen Drakmari and Nathani working together on projects they would have fought over just a year ago. That's their gift, Insu agreed. They help us remember what we could be instead of focusing on what we are. Back on the capital world, Hyunsu met with the leaders of the major powers to discuss the next phase of galactic integration. The meeting room was unlike any that had existed before, a space where beings could interact in both physical and non-physical dimensions. The transition is proceeding better than we hoped, reported Boram, who had become the liaison between human and non-human military forces. There have been incidents, but nothing we couldn't handle peacefully. The key is patience, Hyun-Soo said. We've had millions of years to develop our understanding. We can't expect other species to achieve the same level in just a few months. Supreme Chancellor Wu Jin leaned forward. But there are those who resist the changes. Some groups are calling for a return to the old ways, claiming that human influence is weakening their species. Fear of change is natural, replied Yunji, who had become the chief counselor for species adapting to human guidance. They're afraid of losing their identity, of becoming something they don't recognize. What do we do about them? Asked Ambassador Veltara. We wait, Hyunsu said simply. We continue to offer help to those who want it, and we remain patient with those who don't. Eventually, they'll see the benefits of cooperation over conflict. Not everyone was convinced that patience was the answer. In the secure facility where Kyung-ho was being rehabilitated, the former emperor struggled with his own demons. You're asking me to give up everything I believed in, he said to So Young, the human therapist assigned to his case. Not give up, she replied gently. Transform. You believed in strength, in power, in dominance. Those things can still exist, but in service to others rather than in service to yourself. Kyung-ho stared out the window at the construction activity outside. I conquered half the galaxy. I commanded millions of ships. I was the most powerful being in known space. And what did that power bring you? So Young asked. Happiness? Peace? Fulfillment? The former emperor was quiet for a long moment. No, he finally admitted. It brought me fear. Fear that someone would take it away. Fear that I wasn't strong enough. Fear that I would lose everything. Power over others always brings fear, So Young explained. Because it's not real power. Real power comes from within, from understanding your place in the larger pattern of existence. The other humans, Kyung-ho said. They could destroy this entire system with a thought, couldn't they? Probably, So Young agreed, but they choose not to. That's real power, having the ability to do something and choosing not to because it would cause harm. As the months passed, the galaxy began to change in ways no one had expected. Not through conquest or domination, but through slow, steady growth and understanding. On Drakmari worlds, ancient warrior cultures began to explore concepts of strength through protection rather than aggression. Zephyrian scientists made breakthroughs in energy manipulation that had eluded them for centuries. Karathi philosophers developed new theories of existence that bridged the gap between science and spirituality. And throughout it all, the humans continued to guide and teach, never imposing their will but always offering their wisdom to those ready to receive it. The transformation wasn't universal. Some species and individuals continued to resist, clinging to old ways and old fears. But they were becoming a minority as more and more beings discovered the benefits of cooperation and mutual growth. One year, a